Well, hi, and thanks for joining me here for the first day on a new series on this receiver, and in behind it is the amplifier sitting there. So this has come from a moderate size console stereo. The record player's already been through my shop a few months ago, and in subsequent testing I discovered that this guy has a bad hum. So in order to deal with the hum, I've extracted the receiver here and the amplifier. They're two separate chassis. A great big cable runs between them. And what I don't have in here, of course, are the speakers, because they're mounted in a large console, and there's just no way I can have something like that in my shop. So I'm going to have to come up with some kind of speaker arrangement. Now the story on this is, the primary job is to make the record player and amplifier work. I think the amplifier hums. I don't think that's a big deal. The secondary job would be to be able to put in a Bluetooth signal into the amplifier somehow. The next level would be get the radio to work. AM obviously would be easier. And the last level of work here would be to make this whole thing work. Make the whole thing work, make the FM receiver work, the whole shebang, and return it record player, AM FM radio, and of course it has a tape input. You could plug your Bluetooth receiver, which I have one for this, into it, and presto, Bluetooth. Whatever you like would go through here. Turn this thing into a modern jukebox, basically. So we'll take a look at the name on this, or the model number. I couldn't find any information about it, so here's the tag. It says Canadian Admiral Corporation. We're well known for making appliances. Not so much these, but appliances like washing machines and that. Port Credit, Ontario. So the chassis number is J105X. And for the life of me, I can't find any reference to anything. It looks like Admiral information is a little hard to come by. I'm not sure I've had another Admiral receiver or radio in here. I probably have, but I just don't recall. There are not that many of them. The speaker outputs on this are phono jacks at the back, and it also comes. I think this might qualify as one of the yes. Always come to tell me that the hearings are on. I got to go back and watch the hearings. So, now what was I saying? Peanut, you disturbed me. It doesn't take much to throw me off here. So yeah, I was just saying, I think this is one of the last serious tube things that was made back then. An example of, let's put it, an example of some of the very last tube equipment. And the reason I say that is because this guy is loaded. These are the output tubes here. This is a 6BQ5 output tube. 4 of them here. Driven by, I'm going to guess these are 12AX7s. What are they? 6EQ7. Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Hold on, Peanut. We'll go watch it together. So what I think I've got here is one of the last tube amps. Let's put it that way. An example of one of the last tube amps. So, okay, you really want to see the hearings, eh, Peanut? Peanut? Is that right? Okay, let's go. We're gonna go watch those hearings. Okay, let's start with the amplifier here. My objective is to get this whole thing working right away. So I need to know how to plug the speakers in. Now, out on the console, there's actually 4 wires plugged in, and 2 of them are empty. I think these 2 are empty. Out on the console, it's a little hard to see when this was there. So I only have 2 speakers over here to use. I got to figure out where to plug them in here. So that's one deal. I looked for a schematic. This amplifier is a J104X. I think if I look a little longer, I may find it. The receiver is called a J105X. I couldn't find anything on it, but I just discovered this number. So with some luck, I may get a schematic for this, but at the moment I don't have it. So just looking at the top here, it's kind of obvious everything that's on here. Filter capacitors, great big power supply producing the high voltage with sufficient power to operate these tubes and really ultimately operate the speakers. This must be the preamp tubes, and this must be pairs in push-pull. This must be a two-part tube. You can see it's a two-part tube. So it's half preamp for here, the other half preamp for there. There must be on the receiver where the signal inversion takes place, I think, because you need the signal inverted to operate push-pull. So somewhere that's done, somewhere. Two output transformers here. So obviously this is a stereo guy. These are for little lights on the console, a little indicator light that powers on or something like that. This is a plug for the great big multi-wire cord that goes back to the receiver, and this is hooked up to power. I know that because I already glanced under here. Let's take a look underneath now. So my first thought was, I already know this hums a little bit. Oh, it must be these guys. But then on a second look, no, these are not filter capacitors at all. There's the filter capacitors are these guys. This one, notice, is got a paper cover on it. It's got an insulated base. This one doesn't. Appears to be right in contact with the chassis. Just worth noting these things, and maybe some other things as we go along. So what this really is the crossover network, and these two choke coils are part of the crossover network, or crossover. Maybe network's too strong a word here. So we know the output must be coming out of these transformers. There's two wires on this side. The other side has a whole pile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. 5 coming out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That's a few more wires than I would expect. Really, I kind of expect 2 on each side. So I really hope to get a schematic here for sure. So let's assume the 2 wires are the output. Probably not a good assumption. These are probably inputs. Let's see, the tubes are up here. Oh boy. I'm not sure I'm going to just be able to look at this and figure too much out. Let's start from the output terminals, the speakers here. So assumably, because these are here and these are here, this is a crossover network, these are arranged by treble, bass, mid-range, or maybe treble, bass, and just neutral, or everything, if you like. And I'd like to figure out which ones would be the everything. So we can see these 2 are getting a feed through the capacitors. So what gets through a capacitor? Higher frequencies. So these 2 would be the trebly ones. That's these 2 here. And there is something plugged into these. Must be the tweeter speakers in the console. And then the rest of them are plugged out here. This must be the bass side of things. And sure enough, yeah, I can see the connection right into this choke coil. So does that leave us with these being everything? Is that the everything connection? So it looks like it is, and what they've done is so everything that's coming out of the amplifier is available on these, and they've gone ahead and snuck a feed. Okay. they snuck the feed into and through the coil for the base side of things. It looks like they have a feed going back to the capacitor to do the treble side of things. What's this yellow wire doing going back this way? So it's possible this is feedback. It's very possible this is feedback. Ends up at a small capacitor and resistor. Probably that's the feedback. So, okay, well that makes it great then. I solved my issue. Where do I hook up speakers? Hook them up to the two everything spots. And I think I'm going to be doing this with clip leads. Or I could even solder wires in there. Now let's just take a look at this while we got this up. We're halfway into it. Might as well finish off looking at it. So these are the 4 output tubes. You see some high wattage resistors. They look to be just fine. So I'm looking for evidence of heating, overheating, blackening, smudging up on the chassis. You know, signs of high mileage. I don't see anything like it. Here's a series of resistors going to the tubes, and not one of them looks any different. They all look fine. This thing looks like it's low mileage. This is what I'm starting to think. So the filter side of it looks like it's just this, or a rectifier side of it. Oh, here's the other one here. Right, so we got 2 diodes. You can see they're actually pointed in the opposite direction. You can really tell that that's what's going on there. Another very large wattage resistor. Doesn't appear to have ever been hot. It's got a circuit breaker. Let's follow the power wire in it and see what they're doing with that. So here's the power wire coming in. It's just an old-fashioned, non-polarized, any which way plug. Let's see, the wire comes around to this terminal, and the other one comes around to this terminal. So these 2 terminals, it's definitely not plugged in. These 2 terminals then are where the power comes in. Neither one is grounded that I can see so far, but I have this capacitor to the circuit breaker. And then the other side of the circuit breaker goes up to here. So this is going to be the power type plug, I guess, powering the receiver. Let me just, does the receiver have a great big transformer on it? Let me just take a peek here. Hang on one second. Okay, good. Huh. No, this is the only power transformer in the whole setup. So this guy's the power supply for all. So what would you be sending back 120 volts for? The record player gets its power off the receiver. So at least that, anyway. At least that's one reason. Maybe there's a switch that switches the power on and off to the record player over on the receiver or something like that. But anyway, this is power. That's the thing to know. Not that this one here is particularly safe. It's going to have high voltage on it because the high voltage is developed here. And the receiver gets its high voltage from here. So I can see that this wire is shielded and this wire is shielded, the red one here. And they both go up. So they're coming into the two preamp tubes. These might not be push-pull. These might be in parallel. No, it doesn't matter. We'll find out when the schematic shows up for sure how it's done. But anyway, this is the incoming signal. The interesting thing is the white wire's ground shield is put into one of these plug terminals, but the ground shield on the red wire is just cut back here. So I'm bringing over one ground wire, not both. Maybe it's just simply because you only need one, and two is just a wasting a pin. Something like that's probably going on. Okay, I'm not sure I'm going to extract too much more out of this from looking at it. I went at paper capacitors, and no. That era is over by the time this guy's made. And it's got this style of capacitor, which are generally quite reliable. So all in all, it looks great. The unreliable components here would be these two guys, but they're just in a, they're not doing a heavy service. These two guys, and of course the tubes could be worn, but it looks like not a lot of mileage. Let's pull that out here. First, are they all the same? They aren't. This is a Zenith, Philips, Philips, Philips. So this got one Zenith in it. So some tubes have really good evidence of wear and use. And you can look for black staining. Now I can see it up on the top right here. It's probably not terribly visible in the camera, but just on the top wafer, I can see a little blackening. But I don't know how to judge that particular one. I still got another one here. Now, conceivably, this one's newer than the rest, but it looks the other way around to me. This one, there's a bit of a, again, you're not going to see it, but there's a bit of a darkening up in here, a staining. As if a very fine spray of black misty stuff was sprayed on the inside of this glass. It has a very distinct bottom line to it. Again, it just doesn't look, they don't look very worn out to me at all. These ones I wouldn't expect these ones to show anything like that. It's these hot output tubes that you can just look at them sometimes and tell that they're high mileage. Okay, so we know the story with this more or less. I'm going to bring the receiver up here, and I think if I can get the speakers hooked up, we're going to try listening to this thing. Okay, so what I've done is I've soldered in speaker wires over to a couple of small speakers here, so there can't be any problems. That's a theory anyway, so that's good. So that part of it is ready. Time for the receiver to come in now. Okay, so here's the receiver. I should take a good look at it before I operate it. And very shiny, very clean. Another sign of very low use. Here's the tube rundown, stamped right in here. 6BA6, 6AU6, 6AL5, 12AT7, 12AX7, 12AX7. So something E6 over here that's unfortunately solder on. Oh, it must be a 6BE6 and a 6BA6 down here. Another larger electrolytic capacitor here. Well, probably the antenna coil over here. FM tuners out here. There's the FM tuner tube. Let's take a little closer look. I'll use the other camera. We'll get a closer look at things. Everything's going to be in a really good shape here. This is really, really good shape. I'm a little quiet here because I'm studying what I'm seeing, but I'd really be stunned if I'm going to see something that's out of sorts here. Okay, and then it's all just not much more to see up here on the top. Oh, I'll flip around to the front here. And we have the tube here. Ooh, pretty dirty stuff. Looks fairly blackened in there, which means a fair bit of mileage. So that's the magic eye tube. Light over here. AM, FM. Whole bunch of buttons. Whole bunch of lights. One's missing here. I popped it out. That's why one light is missing. These all look like they're burned out. That's just at a row of five lights. This might be the stereo indicator or something like that. This guy goes in two directions, I think. But okay, let's go underneath. Take a look. Well, at a glance, looks great, for sure. Electrolytic capacitor there. That looks like it might be one here. A lot of diodes right in this area. This is probably the FM discriminator down here. This is probably an element of the FM discriminator also. Coil like this on here, typical of FM circuitry. Get two separate rows of IF. Two. It's hard to say for sure. I'm not sure yet. A lot of these radios use the. I think there's two tracks here. So a lot of radios have like a dual IF transformer, if you like. Looks like this doesn't. Looks like it has a FM track and an AM track. Let's get a look at the. Oh, here's all the buttons up in here. They're separate. Each one's kind of. They're all quite separate. See the release bar if you look up in here. explosion on it. Okay, let's get a closer look in there. Something interesting right here. Let's start right at that something interesting. It's got 3 wires coming out of it, I'm pretty sure. Yep. A little transistor in here. So this really is right at the end of the tube era. And they may have put this in here for any one of a number of reasons. It may have been straight engineering. It made a lot of sense to use this device here. I don't know what it's doing, but or they may have been kind of experimenting a little bit. This is as far as they've gotten with newfangled stuff. So this is almost certainly a germanium transistor, and it's probably not so healthy. So to keep that in mind. Okay, and we'll just work our way now from the bottom along here. Again, everything just looks fantastic. This really looks like it got almost no use. And you know, I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't a lot of consoles like this that people had more for furniture in their homes than for listening. My parents were kind of like that. We had a beautiful console. 100 microfarads and something, so this is probably a bypass capacitor. This other one over here, it's like, yeah, 4. So this one is probably, and you can see the way what it's hooked up to looks like some kind of balanced thing. I mean, you know, it looks like it's a symmetrical arrangement of components. So this is certainly the discriminator for FM, and almost certainly that capacitor's got to go. Okay, I'm going to just keep. There's a lot of stuff to see in here. I mean, it's just a real forest of parts. Might guess with this coil that this is the FM side here, and the AM side would be over here. You could guess. The higher voltage wires have collected dust on them, in the terminals and everything. So each one of these tubes has one of these plates. It's no mistake that they're there. But I couldn't tell you what they're for. And it's another sign of some high frequency stuff going on, and these are the kinds of things that have to be done to deal with it, I would say. I mean, obviously those sheets are shielding of some sort, but precisely what it is they're doing, I can't say. And seeing a single heated part. No parts that looked. Look at these are fairly high wattage resistors here, I'm pretty sure. 4 watts, and they look like they haven't been hot. One of the things I love about these console stereos is the engineers had space to work with. There was no shortage of space. In fact, to some degree, they wanted everything big to go in the big console and look big. And certainly the case with this one. The front panel of this is gigantic. The numbers are huge. So that ended up giving the engineers lots of space to work with under these chassis, and it makes them pleasant to work on. You know, there's a lot of parts in here, but they are not so much on top of each other. No, not at all. Yeah. What's up here that I haven't seen? Yeah, we're not finding a darn thing, which is good. But, you know, I've always found it worthwhile to do this. You know, a lot of doing this kind of work is gaining familiarity with the item you're going to work on. Just getting familiar with it. Okay. It's like, for instance, finding the transistor. Finding the transistor before it finds me. So I see no reason why this can't work. And I have had it switched on. So I have no concerns about switching it on in here. I had it switched on in the console. I put the record player back in and gave it a try, and that's when I discovered the hum and that kind of stuff. Speaking about that, so I selected these relatively small speakers just to be convenient here in my shop, and they may not reproduce the hum very well. Just have to keep that in mind. By glory gosh, I think we can actually turn this thing on now. Okay, so who's the volume? I don't know. All down. Off. So I'm going to have to stop for a second, run out, figure out what each one of these buttons is. And I have photographs of this stuff. I have photographs. Oh, yeah, right. Who needs a photo? We've got the cover plates. Treble, bass, balance, loudness. So that's the volume. Off, phono, FM, AM, and tape. So tape out here, phono out there, AM is here, and the rest are FM of various sorts. FM stereo. FM stereo. I don't know, opening for that light, and a nice little symbol there. Good. Keep that handy. Got the volume down. We would want the balance in the middle. Bass and treble kind of in the middle. Switch is off. First thing we're going to try is AM. AM is this one. Plug it in. This is with this off, so we should see nothing happening. Full voltage, 123. Okay, I'm switching on to AM. It's got a fair number of tubes. Will come on. Now I'm going to put on power. I've got the, once again, got the dim bulbs here. These are probably, well, we don't know what we're going to get. Maybe we're going to get a screaming hum, and that'll be the end of that. I can't remember how bad it was, but let's watch and see. Okay, dulling down, and they should come back up. It's not too much light came on here. How does this thing be low mileage, but all the lights are burned out? How does that add up? Okay, so the tubes are lighting up over here. I think this would be enough. Oh, something. It's a good start. So the A, so there's no loop antenna on this? Really? Well, that's kind of surprising. I figured there'd be a loop antenna sitting, you know, a rod antenna. I shouldn't say loop antenna. Huh. Okay, let's go for broke here. Currently, it's running with 78 volts. You know what? That's not enough. So we're gonna hit it full blast. Whammy. Measure the wattage over here. 137 watts. Ooh, 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 ooh. Better get my hands ready on that. My hands ready here. What I mean by that is get ready to hit the off switch. Okay, so a sound like that can be from all kinds of things. Tubes expanding a little bit, pins making contact for the first time in a long time. Lots of hot tubes back there. Volume this time. Aha. It does sound like a radio. Looks like it's one pointer. Yeah, it's one dial. That's that's not too reassuring. It's no effect. Okay, volume volume down a bit. And what we'll do is we'll try the button here a few times. This was the tape, so let's flip back and forth here. Woo! Okay, now that sounds quite different. You should be hearing this in stereo. The way the speakers are arranged in my shop, you should be hearing this in stereo to some degree, like me, same as me. This might get. Let's turn this down and just give it a workout. It's my cat crying in the background. Sounds the same. Okay, without getting into it too deep, let's leave that aside now. And we'll try FM. My poor cat is crying out there. By the way, oh, there is a bit of green light in there. Ooh, what's that? Now that sounds like FM hiss. We're doing this without an antenna. Fireworks. Just FM fireworks. Oh, fireworks stopped. So if I stick an antenna on there, fireworks back. Ooh, anybody hear that? Let's stop this for a second. Okay, so am I hearing things? I could be. What I thought I heard there in the middle of those pops was a different pop and then a deeper hum. It sounded like an overload hum. It sounded like something shorted for a brief moment. Heavy current through the transformer. That's what it sounded like. Could be something going wrong in the output tubes easily, threatening the output transformers. Risky business. Pops were pretty thumpy. So, did we find out enough here? So the on-off switch for that guy is over here. I don't have this guy plugged in. I gotta figure out an on-off switch or some trick to power this one up by itself. Get this off of that. Hear that sound again? We know it's coming from there. I would suspect it too, for sure. Maybe my little speakers might act as fuses in some way. So I'm going to have to think a little bit about this before taking too much more of a gamble. I mean, there's not much for me to do with these things except, deal with the power supply capacitors if necessary. I didn't hear much of a hum during that whole affair either. Okay, that's a lot to think about. Yeah, that's lots to think about. Thanks for watching the first video.